Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review of the trilogy This Mortal Coil by Emily Suvada. This is a YA post-apocalyptic sci-fi novel, and the 3 books in the series include This Mortal Coil, This Cruel Design, and This Vicious Cure. This series takes place in a world that has been ravaged by a plague called Hydra. Hydra has infected people, and it's actually a very unique virus. It causes people to literally detonate and blow up, which is both nasty to think about. And the first time that I read it was early on in the first book, and I was like, that is absolutely gross, and I've never heard anything like it. But yes, Hydra causes people to detonate. It also causes, before detonation, people to kind of turn into these zombie-like creatures in regards to the fact that they lose their humanity. They are violent, they attack each other, they kill each other, they just look for bloodshed. And those people are known as lurkers. And when people reach this stage, it is also known as the Wrath. Now, currently there is no vaccine for Hydra. And the only way to vaccinate yourself or to have immunity from Hydra is to ingest the flesh of people who are infected. So when I first started this series, I'm like, wow, Emily Suvada definitely does not shy away from gory details. We start off with people blowing up. We start off with this plague. We start off with cannibalism in order to stay alive. And early on in the series, our main character does eat part of a person to get immunity from the virus. And the immunity only lasts for a certain time frame. So if you find that content disturbing, I probably would shy away from the series. However, those parts of the stories are only mentioned early on and they are not prevalent throughout the whole book. So once you kind of get over the ick factor, then you'll realize that it's just there to provide context to the world that our main character is living in and is not a main focus of the story. After this outbreak, a company called Climax built these big bunkers for people who wanted to survive the plague could come and live in. This is a world that is filled with advances in technology. Everybody has a panel in their arm in which they can have apps downloaded into their bodies, and these apps can vaccinate them against diseases. They can change the way they look. They can change their genetics. And Cartaxis will not allow anyone into the bunkers that has apps in their panel that are not approved by Cartaxis. Our main character is Katarina, and Katarina is the daughter of Lachlan, who is this famous coder, and he is the only person to have ever been able to code a vaccine for Hydra. Early on in the book, he ends up getting kidnapped by Cartaxis so that he will continue to develop this vaccine for Hydra. Not long after Kat's father is kidnapped, we are introduced to a soldier named Cole, and Cole knows Kat's father, Lachlan, worked with him years ago at Cartaxis and gave Cole a message to find his daughter and go to Canada, and that is the only way that they will be able to find the vaccine for Hydra. So I'm going to start off with things I liked about this book. I really liked the technology aspect of this book. I found most of it, especially the technology mentioned in the first 2 books, to be very believable. It is a future that I can definitely see us having, where everybody has things installed on their body and are able to download things into their body to change certain things about them. Healing tech has advanced where we can ingest nanites, and those nanites help us heal faster. I found all of that technology to be very believable, and I found that Emily Suvada definitely wrote this technology and explained this technology in a way that was very accessible to the reader, especially if you are not someone who is familiar with scientific jargon and that sort of thing. Having said that, I feel like there is a downside to the technology mentioned in this series because there is so much of it. In every single book, I felt like there was new technology that was introduced, and the author would have to stop and explain how this technology worked and why it was important, and a lot of times that did pull me out of the story, and it was almost like, you've established this technology early on, why don't you just stick with that instead of adding more and more as the series progresses. So just beware that there are times where she'll just jump out with a paragraph about how this technology works in the middle of like an action scene or some important scene. So for me, that was a little distracting, but it didn't take away from the series as a whole. Another thing I liked about the series was that the books did get better as they progressed, which I usually find to not be the case. Usually the first book in a series is definitely the most compelling. But in this case, I actually rated books 2 and 3 4 stars, whereas I only rated book 1 3 stars. All of these books had so many plot twists, and I was starting to think, especially in book 1, that these twists were fairly predictable, and some of them are. If you read a lot of YA, you will definitely be able to predict things in the series, but then there's things that happen that I did not see coming at all. So it's almost like a 50-50. I feel like the plot twists were a big strength of this trilogy because there were so many of them, and some of them were really well done. I can definitely commend Emily Suvada's plot device choice in the second book and how that ended. I felt like that was probably the most interesting plot twist of all with regards to how the second book ended. And I'm not going to spoil anything here, but the third book, we are introduced into a dual perspective, whereas books 1 and 2, we only have Kat's perspective. Book 3, we have a dual perspective, and the perspective is from a character that we have known about, but didn't really have a voice until book 3. And I absolutely love this character. I'm not going to tell you who it is. I don't want to spoil anything, but they are an awesome, morally gray character. And it's almost like they are an antagonist, but you're not sure they're an antagonist. You're not sure if they're a protagonist. And I love characters that think they're doing the right thing when they're doing bad things, and all they do is justify themselves because they really deep down think they're doing the right thing, and everybody around them is like, you're crazy, you're insane, you're a psychopath, why are you doing these things? So that was a trope that I really enjoy, and our character in the third book had this, so that was a lot of fun to read about. This series is definitely very plot driven. It is not character driven at all. So if you are a big character reader, I probably wouldn't recommend this. There is good character development with our main character, Kat, and I would say another character that I was talking about in book 3. Those are the two most compelling characters in my opinion, and they do have good arcs, but the character develop is not the focus of these books. It is definitely the plot and the conflict between Cartaxis and the Skies and Entropia and all of these people who are fighting one another for access to this cure. Now I'm going to talk about the things that I don't really like, and the first one I'm going to talk about is the romance. This series had a romance, and it manifested itself in book 1, and honestly, it is probably one of my least favorite romances that I've ever read in any YA series. It is so dry. I found Cole, he's the Cartaxis soldier that Lachlan sent to find his daughter and take her to Canada to help find the cure. I found him to be such a boring, dry character, and he never really changed over the course of the novel, and I've heard people complain that he kind of disappeared in the third book, and it didn't bother me at all because I found him so dull. There was, like I said, a romance between the two of them, and I just felt no chemistry between them whatsoever, and I really could care less about the romance. It wasn't really an integral part of the plot, so I was able to move past it, but that's just my opinion. I did not dig that romance at all. Like I said, this is a very fast-paced series, and having said that, I wish that there were some actual slower moments. In book 3, when our climax happens, that actually is a slower moment, and I think the reason that I was okay with a climax not being, oh, people fighting to the death in this big intense moment is because there were so many big intense moments throughout this whole series that when a slower moment happened, it kind of was like, finally, I get a breather. And that was how the climax went down in book 3. And I think if it had been any other series, I probably would have thought that was a really, really poor way to overcome the conflict. But in this series, it actually did work. So if you're someone who really likes slower moments in your books, then this probably isn't the right series because it is definitely just go, go, go the whole time. Another thing that I wasn't a huge fan about in this book was the progression of the technology. Like I said, in book 1 and 2, the technology was very believable and very accessible, but as we got into book 3, the technology almost bordered on fantasy. There was things like mind control and being able to split your mind and having two people live within the same brain. So all of those things, for me, I really had to suspend my belief, and it definitely, for me personally, bordered on fantasy. So while I enjoyed the technology aspects of this book and the science behind it, all of the technology that was introduced to us in later on in books 2 and 3 was definitely more theory and not something that I can believe would ever really be possible. Another downfall to this series was the lack of character development of the side characters. I've also heard a lot of other people have this complaint. We have a lot of side characters. We have Laban, we have Cole, we have Anna, we have Ziana, we have all of these side characters, and none of them really changed throughout the course of the novel, and I really didn't enjoy any of them. I felt like they were just there, which was fine because we had a strong lead and I wasn't overly invested in the side characters, so the fact that they didn't develop wasn't a huge issue for me. I will say that one of the side characters does appear in the third book really, really late, and I felt like she just appeared to propel the plot. We had not seen her for the whole entire series, and then suddenly she just emerges only to help the climax happen. So I felt like that plot choice was just way too convenient for the author, and it kind of made me less invested in how the story wrapped up. All in all, this is a really, in my opinion, fun, fast-paced sci-fi series that I would definitely recommend if you do enjoy reading young adult sci-fi. I feel like the science is really cool, the technology is really cool, the twists and turns are really cool. It will definitely keep you on the edge of your seat. But if you are looking for books that are super character invested and you're looking for characters that just have these awesome arcs, then this probably isn't for you. I ended up rating this series 3.5 out of 5 stars. Alright, so that is it for my trilogy review of This Mortal Coil by Emily Suvada. Let me know in the comments if you have read the series or are interested in reading it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new content. I post videos every Sunday, and sometimes I post bonus videos in the middle of the week. I will see you guys soon in another video. Goodbye!